This talk is about free software used for government, business, and education. My name is John Maddog Hall, and I'm the Executive Director of Linux International. First of all, I'd like to describe what we mean when we say free software. Unfortunately, in the English language, free software can have two meanings. It can mean software gratis, which means that you don't pay for it, but it could also mean software libre, which means free as in freedom. And we're going to be talking today mostly about the freedom aspect of the software. The freedom to read the source code of the binaries that are created, the freedom to make changes to the source code so you can change the way the software works, the freedom to redistribute those changes to anybody who needs them, and the freedom to use the software for any purpose. In fact, the only freedom that you typically don't have with free software is the freedom to limit somebody else's freedoms from what you received. In other words, perhaps creating a binary-only image of the software with the changes that you put in it and giving that out to somebody else. All of the people in the free software area that I know, including Richard Stallman, who I've known for over a quarter of a century, have never said that you should not be able to make a good living writing software. It's just that after the software is written, it should be free, as in freedom. Now, this freedom has importance to various groups. The importance to any particular country is the ability to create local jobs in writing really good, really complex, really important software. The inability of people to find interesting jobs in writing software creates a brain drain from a particular country. As an example, the first time I went to Venezuela many years ago, I was talking with some university students, and I said to them, "What are your plans?" And they said, "Well, we're going to move to England or the United States so that we can write some really great software, working for companies like Microsoft or Oracle or any of the other famous companies who write a lot of the closed-source proprietary software." And I said, "Well, why are you doing that?" They said, "Well, we want to have the challenge of writing really good software, and unfortunately here in our own country, we don't have that challenge." This is a very bad thing, because what it does is it leads to these people leaving and having fewer and fewer people who have the skills to do really good things in high tech, to help out other companies inside of your country. You want to develop high-paid skills, high technology skills, whenever you can. Another importance to a country is the security of the country, whether we're talking about an economic security of things like balance of trade, sending money outside of your country for things which could be used and could be done inside of your country, paying local people who then buy local food, local housing, and pay local taxes. Every dollar that leaves your country is like $10 that would stay inside. Another economic issue is that of embargo. For example, there's been an embargo for the past 40 years at this little country off the coast of Florida called Cuba. The United States has told Cuba that we're not going to sell you anything that has any technology in it, and this is a problem for them. They can't simply go to Bill Gates and say, "Hey Bill, if you fix my problem, I'll send you a box of cigars," because Bill, as a loyal U.S. citizen, can't do that. Neither can Red Hat or Novell, who are United States companies. So you need, as a country like Spain or a country like Brazil or any large country, should be able to maintain the software, which is no longer a luxury to them. It's no longer a luxury. I mean, if you did not have software, then planes would fall from the skies, elevators would stop working, and business and industry and government would cease to come to a halt. This is a problem. Also, military. I mean, you want to be able to look at the source code of the software you're putting into your planes, your tanks, your armaments of all types, because you want to make sure there's no Trojans in there that would prevent them from working the way you wanted them to in times of stress. And finally, there's longevity with longevity as a security feature. How long should the software work? Governments and other things should be around for a very long time. You should be able to read your documents which you've stored electronically, whether or not a company goes out of business or whether or not they've changed the product line, you need to be able to understand what that format is and be able to recreate it and be able to read your documents far, far into the future. Just like free software is important to a country, free software is also important to companies. Now, companies need to have control over their business practices. They need to be able to control when they upgrade their software or how they upgrade their software. They should be able to control the cost of their software. They should be able to say at any given point in time, yes, we want to move to a new version or not move to a new version. We want to extend the software to meet our needs, or we'll live with it for right now. You also should be able to say, as a business, what processor or systems you want to put your software on, whether it be an Intel processor or be an ARM processor, and how many of those are you going to be using? Are you going to be using thousands of them? Well, if software is very expensive, this could be prohibitively expensive for you to do. You need to be able to control your software and your software costs. And just like in a country, you need to have longevity. You need to be able to say, how long is my software going to work? And can I repair it if the company goes out of business, or if they reduce a product line and my software is no longer available for updates and things like that. Proprietary software companies, closed source companies, take away this control from the end user company and make them software slaves to the closed source proprietary software producer. Now, sometimes I speak to hundreds of business people in a room, and I ask them a few simple questions. First of all, who has ever had a problem with closed source programs? And if there's 400 business people in a room, 397 of them will raise their hand. And then I will say, of the people with your hands raised, who has turned in a problem report? And most of them being business people will have turned in a problem report to the company. Finally, I will say, who has gotten back a good answer or workaround for that problem report? And now all of the hands in the room will go down except for perhaps 2 or 3 people, and I'll look over and I'll say, Mr. Gates, you don't count. Now, this is a problem. This is a very sad statement on the statement of affairs of our software industry. And it's not that these people don't want to give you good service. It's the fact that they can't give you good service. They have too many customers, and they can't relate and react to the needs of every single one of them. This is part of the control which has been taken away from you, and you have given into their hands. I'll ask one final question. Who has ever had to change the way their business worked in order to fit the way the software works? And now out of the 400 people, perhaps 300 or 350 will raise their hands. This costs time and money for them to change the way they do business because the software cannot or will not be changed by the proprietary company to meet their needs. Now, free software is also important to universities. And to understand this better, you have to really understand what is the purpose of a university. The purpose of a university is not to get a student a job. The purpose of the university is to create a thinking electorate, people who are going to be leading the country into the future, whether those be politicians, whether those be business people. They also, the business people need to have a thinking workforce. You know, if we didn't have technology in the day and training in technology, then sooner or later we would all go back to plowing the earth with wooden sticks, because a steel plow requires technology to build. And the university should be creating people who create a lifetime knowledge path. They should be able to learn how to learn on their own. They should be able to separate the difference between truth and fiction. They should data and information. They should be able to learn on their own. To do this, you need a deep understanding of the principles behind things, not how a particular product works, because the product will be gone next year or the year after. It will be drastically different. You need to be able to know how it works, and this is how free and open source software teaches you. In the world of research, You need to be able to say what type of research is the university doing and who is funding it. If the research is being funded with public money, then the results of that research should be public, and it should be free and open. And the way to do this best in the world of software is with free and open source software. To publish not only a paper explaining what you did, but the code that you wrote in a free and open way to be able to see how it actually works. Even if you're doing the private research with private money, the university has been, from the beginning, trained and educated and knowledgeable with public money. So even if there's private money funding some specific research, a certain amount of that research should be open to the public because the public has paid for it. So what we're talking about in the age of university education is a new model of developing software. It's the same as the old model of developing software that existed between the period of 1945 and 1983 or 84, before closed source proprietary manufactured software actually got started. What you're paying for is a service of writing software the way the customer wants it to have it, the way the company wants to have it, the way the government wants to have it. You're paying them to develop software that puts them in control because they own the software once they paid for it. So what they're really paying for is a service of writing this software, and the service of copying and distributing software that already exists, the service of getting features in their time frame, the time frame they want, the service of integrating that software into their government, their business, their educational institution, and the service of training people in how to use that software. Now, all of these services you do with proprietary software, but you can do it better with free software because you understand better how the software works. You understand better how to integrate it because the software can be changed. You can integrate software better than if you're working with 2 or 3 or 4 closed source proprietary software packages that you can't change. And in the worst case, for the customer, for the government, or for the business, you pay for that software change one time, and you may never pay for it again. And in the best case, you never pay for the software change. You simply use the free software as it exists, the same way that you would use closed source proprietary software as it exists. But that's your business decision. So don't be afraid of the word service. A lot of times I'll say service software and people kind of cringe and they think that service is the same thing as sweeping the streets or cooking hamburgers or things like that. In reality, it's more like brain surgery. A brain surgeon doesn't create a product. They actually just fix your existing brain. It's a service. You don't end up with 2 brains when the brain surgery gets done. You don't end up with brain version 2.0. So, but the brain surgeon is still a highly paid, highly skilled type of service, and they make a lot of money. So in educating people and teaching people about this new model of developing software, the first thing you have to teach them is how to do distributed development, where you're working with maybe teams of people on a new project. How do you license that software to be your best financial gain? How do you develop formal standards around that software, and how do you then code to write to those standards, both above and below it, to make it scale better, to make it faster, to make it use less resources, to make it more stable. All of these things are ways you can improve upon standard software. You have to learn how to motivate software developers that you may never see face to face, and how to locate and engage this community of software developers to help you make the best product fastest. You need to teach people how to keep innovating everywhere all the time, a lot of times in incremental, small innovations to keep moving things forward at a fast pace, and how to evaluate and size customer needs, which will show them what the return on investment will be to them when you make that software change. Here are things that you really should teach as a university. A lot of universities have stopped. They think that teaching Java is the only language they need to teach. I believe you should teach the fundamentals. How does a computer really work? How does machine language really work? How does cache memory really work? These are the types of things that can make the difference between whether a program runs in 10 minutes or 10 hours. How do the compilers and the operating system really work? How do you compare various Office packages? Not just use them, but what's the best Office package for the job? Perhaps it might be a closed source proprietary package. That might be the best one. But until you learn how to compare things, you will not know which is the best. And how do you share your code with other people? And how do you get them to work with you? But you should not be teaching specific products. If you teach a specific product like Nortel networking or Cisco networking, and that company goes out of business, well, you should take back part of the diploma because that part of the training is gone. If you teach fundamentals, it will always be good, and it will be good over a 40 or 50-year period of time. However, free software and free culture is more than just the software. It's about free and open standards, like the Free Standards Organization. How do you participate in writing those standards? How do you work with people? Once you've learned a certain amount of information, do you have to take an expensive class just to be certified in that? You should be able to have a free and open certification method so you can get the training any way that you want to, whether it be by reading books, magazines, surfing the net, just practicing. Then you should be able to go to some place like LPI, the Linux Professional Institute, and get your certification at a reasonable price. You can go to Linux training and find out where there are people located in your area for doing training. And if you do training, if a company does training and you're not listed there, please go and list yourself there. It's free. For open hardware, there are projects like BeagleBoard, open telephony projects, the Arduino board. The idea of openness is not just being used by software anymore. It is now going out into the hardware space. And speaking of the idea of openness continuing out to different places, even open culture. So the idea of Creative Commons is to make it easy to share your music, your pictures, your art, your presentations, your stories, anything you want, but yet still have creative and artistic control over them so that you can get the credit that you want, or you can even make financial gain. Blender.org is a great example of this. It was a closed source proprietary program. The company that was developing it went bankrupt. An organization of the end users formed to move it forward, and now they're creating open movies and open games, open CAD packages, and all of it is doing much better than it was under the proprietary program. I want to introduce just a few people to you, people I've met over the years, because this is a conference about young people and entrepreneurship. The person in the upper right-hand corner is actually riding on top of a robot that is controlled by Linux. His name is Eric Troen. I met Eric at the age of 21, and a few years later, he sold off his shares of Red Hat Software, which is a Linux company. He is one of the founders. He is a multi-millionaire. The person to a little bit to the left and below in the black and white photograph is Mark Spencer. I met Mark at the age of 19 and discussed areas of free and open source software with him. Mark decided to make his project also open source. It was called Asterisk. It is a PBX system. Today, Mark is a multi-millionaire. He employs around 350 people, and thousands more around the world are making a living installing his software. The person in the lower right corner is not a multi-millionaire, but he is a vice president of his own company, and he started by developing a version of Linux and installed into the FAT file system. He was 14 years old when he did this. These people are not software slaves. The reason they went as fast and as far as they could is because the software was available to them, and nobody asked them, what is your age, what is your sex, what religion are you, what sexual orientation are you? They just said, go, look at what we have done, and you can do better. And they did. The newest addition to this group is a young friend of mine that I met at Campus Party Spain about a year ago. He had started studying Linux when he was 12, decided at the age of 12 and a half to create his own distribution. And when I met him, he was 15 years old. His name is Louis. He is on the left in this picture, and he had his own company to develop what is called the Asterisk distribution. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much. I'd like to point out that GNU Linux today is shipping on 1/3 of all the new server systems going out the door. 98% of the top 500 supercomputers that are running in the world. It is the most used operating system in embedded system designs for new toasters, refrigerators, things like that. It is the basis of Android, which is the most distributed cell phone, and it is moving out onto the desktop. So in summary, free and open source culture allows you the freedom to tailor the software to your needs, whether you be government, industry, or a private individual, or university. It gives you the freedom to build your own software industry in your own country. It gives you the freedom to control your own software destiny. And it gives you the freedom to see the brilliance of the people in your own country rather than continue being reliant on people in other countries. With that, I want to thank you very much. My name is John Maddog Hall, and I am the Executive Director of Linux International.